What is going on, guys, and welcome to my first ever video where I react to or talk about really what another YouTuber, that's a military YouTuber, is doing right now. The reason I'm doing this is because I think me reacting to this and what my thoughts are on the topic of Nava, who got out of the Marines active duty, who's now joining back in and doing Marines as a reservist. I think my thoughts on this is going to shed a little bit of light on the situation for some of you that may be going through something at some point in time, with a similar situation as Nava, as well as maybe a little bit of advice for Nava who's going through this transition right now, and maybe other people who are thinking of joining the reserves after being active duty. So really quickly, my reaction to me saying, I didn't see this coming, which I did. I believe I had talked to him before, being like, why don't you, join the reserves? And it's the reason I say that is because it's a really good option, and I recommend it for a lot of people who are going from active duty and wanting to get out. Pretty much every time, I'm like, why don't you join the reserves? I'm trying to get my little brother right now to do the same thing. He's active duty, he's planning on getting out of the Army once his contract is over, and I'm like, hey, why don't you go National Guard or Army Reserves? National Guard because he's a combat MOS, so he would, if he wanted to keep the same MOS, he would have to go National Guard. So, I think the reserves is a great thing, and one of the reasons that I think, it's of course Nava, of course you're joining back to the reserves, because number one, I think that a lot of people, if you enjoy your time in the military active duty, and then you get out, I think it's a pretty strong likelihood that you're gonna be feeling exactly how you were talking in your video, where you miss the camaraderie, you miss all of the cool suckiness, if that makes sense, that the military has to offer. It's kind of weird. It's like you go through all those bonding periods of just terrible times, and it's like you miss it for some weird reason. And so because you enjoy that, you're not gonna get those same experiences on the civilian side, and so you want to do something about it, right? So you end up joining the Army Reserves, the Marine Reserves, any other reserves, right? To get some of that back because you miss it. You want to be back a part of that, but you don't want to, go back active duty because in your case, you're a YouTuber, you're doing your whole real estate thing, you're doing all kinds of other stuff. So you need that flexibility, which is what you were talking about. So that's number one. And then number two, as a military YouTuber, right? So I'm a military YouTuber, but I'm in the Army Reserves. I think I'm the only one, aside from now, with Nava joining the reserves, that is a reservist that has, I don't know, more than, 5 or 10,000 subscribers. I'm not sure what all the military YouTubers are doing. So it's nice to have another reservist military YouTuber out there. That's just awesome. But because we are military YouTubers, or make videos mainly about the military, or have started our channels that have grown and blown up because of the military, it really is going to help him, it's going to help me, it's going to help other military channels out there to have some kind of association with the military. So with Nava, who was active duty as a Marine, he's making all this Marine content, doing all this Marine stuff, he's a Marine, and then you get out, well, now you're a Marine veteran, and so some people may want more up-to-date information and whatnot, so it's good for the channel in a sense, in my opinion, for him. I mean, I don't know, all of his plans if he wants to still make Marine videos or whatever, but it'll be good for him, in my opinion, that he is also a Marine reservist now, and then he's gonna have all these different opportunities that if you watch his video, which I will link in the description, if you watch his video, he talks about all the different times that you can go on orders and do all this stuff. There's a lot of opportunities in the reserves, believe it or not, like some people don't realize. There's a lot of opportunities in the reserves, and so that's more things for him to talk about. That's more experiences for him to get to then guide people throughout their military careers. Now he's gonna have the active duty side experience, and he's gonna have the reserve side experience. So all in all, I think it is a really smart decision for him to take, those 4 years of his IRR and decide to switch to go into the reserves. If he ends up not liking it, it's like, okay, you're not signing up another big contract or anything. This is already kind of built in to your original contract. So in my opinion, that's really smart. Now this is just a little precautionary warning, a little bit of advice for him. For any of you out there that are thinking of switching to reserves after being active duty, and the key word there is after being active duty. Now, I've been in the reserves for 5 years. I was never active duty. I wasn't active duty. I've been activated in a sense of being put on active duty orders, which is whenever a reservist is put on active duty orders for more than like a month or so, right? So basically for me, that's been in training situations, stuff like that. I've never been deployed, okay? After 5 years of being in the reserves, one of the probably the biggest complaint about the reserves is the slow pace of the reserves. And you know, seeing people who, you know, most of the time people in the reserves are active duty people switching to reserves later on in their career for whatever reason, and they just notice and they see, and it annoys the mess out of them, the change of pace. So if you go from active duty, you're doing this Army, Marine stuff every single day, right? You got every single day you're doing this. This is somebody's job to do the Marines. This is somebody's job. Their main focus is on whatever the task is at hand, right? Whenever you switch over to the reserves, that's not the case, with the exception of AGR people, which are active reserves. So what ends up happening that is still a frustration that I still deal with today, except I've, I guess, gotten used to it because I'm in the reserves and I've been in the reserves for 5 years, is just getting things done takes forever. It just really does. Like things that you could just go around and get done in a day or a week will sometimes take 6 months, 3 months, several months for things to happen, because you got people who are going to make these kinds of decisions that are only going to be available once a month, or you yourself may have to do something in person and you're only going to your unit once every month, right? So the pace of things for getting things done is going to take a while. If you've got to solve any kind of S1 paperwork issues or anything, it's just a lot of times it can just be a little bit of a headache. So just a little bit of a piece of advice for anybody who's switching to the reserves or joining the reserves in general is, number one, the change of pace is going to be slower than active duty. That's just the nature of the beast. And then number two, if you want to get things done, you've got to hound on people. You have got to constantly be contacting and emailing and doing all that stuff that you got to do to get people to get off of their butt and you know sign the paperwork, to get on the computer and just do whatever it is. You've got to get on them, because if not, something that should just take a month, which is essentially a weekend in the reserves, something that should take that weekend is going to take you several months because you weren't on the ball trying to press on things to get things done. So that's just a little bit of advice, a little precautionary warning, is that you are going to notice that slower change of pace. Do not let it get you down. You can do stuff about it in a sense, but that is going to be really limited to your rank, your position in the Marines, the Army, for example. So in my opinion, if you really want to make a difference in your unit and really get people up to speed and set an example, then I recommend switching to become an officer, because you can have a real impact on the culture, the environment of your unit. One of the other things that I kind of want to touch on that Nava talked about in his video is how whenever he got out of active duty as a Marine, you know, he was doing great, you know, for a little while and everything, and then his just life started getting all crazy, started doing this and that and the other, and him switching back to reserves, in my opinion, is really good. It's really good for a lot of people just in general, because you do have all that flexibility to do your civilian job and your military, and the military side of things, you can do that as much or as little as you want, so that flexibility is awesome. But also, being in the reserves, you know, you are maintaining that sense of responsibility to maintain yourself physically and mentally, and also, you know, you are accepting that responsibility. Now you are part of that unit, so you're gonna have to make sure that you stay on track, right? You can't be, you know, getting, you know, physically out of shape or whatever. So the reserves in any branch is kind of like just that little bit of stability that some people will need in their lives, especially if you enjoy the military, to kind of make sure that things never really get too crazy. And the reserves is really just a great way to just be a part of the military for the long haul without having to give up, you know, your whole, you know, 20s through your 40-year-olds before you retire. In his case, if he decided to stay in the reserves, he would, you know, he could retire. It's just you don't get retirement pay until, you know, you're 60 years old. But at the same time, you get to be a part of the military. You get to be a Marine in his case for those 20 years. You get to have all those different experiences, and you always have the military as a stabilization in a sense for whatever you end up trying to do. You could really kind of try and do the craziest thing in the world, and then you're like, okay, well, I still got the Marines. I still got these guys that got my back. You know, I can always go on active duty orders for a year if I need a little bit more stabilization. So always having the reserves in your back pocket to use it as your advantage, to use it to your advantage, is a great thing. And then also you get to maintain a lot of the benefits of being in the military as a reservist. So in the end, I do think it is a really smart decision that Nava decided to, you know, with his last 4 years of his IRR, decide to go and join the reserves for all that experience and just to get back in that camaraderie and for all kinds of different positive reasons. I push reserves all the time because I think for a lot of people, it is the way to go. If you don't want to go active duty because you love your civilian job and you want to pursue civilian goals, the reserves is great. The reserves is great for you. So it's awesome to hear I've got another military reserve YouTuber. So that's great. So I'm looking forward to seeing what his thoughts and experiences and just what the Marine Reserves is going to entail, because I don't know any Marine reservists. I do know some reservists in the other branches, but no Marines actually. So that's going to be awesome. But that is it for my first ever reaction advice video about what another military YouTuber is doing. And as always, don't forget, use code WAR10 for 10% off in the merch store. Link down in the description down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button. That'd be awesome. If you check out some more of my videos, hit that subscribe button. That would be even better. Follow me on Instagram and Snapchat if you haven't already. I hope you guys have an amazing freaking day, and I will see y'all later.